Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Salman Anjum at my YouTube channel, and the topic today is another human organ system, which is respiratory system. So as the name is indicating, the respiratory system is about respiration, and respiration means inhalation and exhalation of the gases. And of course, in our case, it is about oxygen as well as carbon dioxide. So before explaining the respiratory system, which deals with the gases actually, as I said, inhales gases or then exhales out the gases. So I need to ask you from where it is getting the gases. Of course, we are getting the gases from our environment. So, in the environment there is present, gases are present in the form of air. So air is basically a mixture of gases that is available to us. And you know about that which gas is more abundantly present in the environment: oxygen, carbon dioxide, or nitrogen. Yes, you are right, it is nitrogen, which is abundantly present around us. Second most abundant gas is oxygen, fortunately. And then there are other gases like carbon dioxide or other. So when we inhale, we take in the air basically, not just oxygen. So when we take in everything, our body has the capability to select something from that which is required by the body. And which gas is required then by the body? That is called oxygen. So our body is quite selective. It has a mechanism and it can selectively pick up oxygen only, and then rest of the gases that we are taking in, like nitrogen or other gases, they go out of the body when we exhale out the gases. So I would mention here how our body has the capability. Of course, I would mention the role of a very important protein. Can you mention the name of that protein for me? Yes, that is hemoglobin, that is present in our blood and that selectively, or you can say magnetically, picks up oxygen only. So you offer the hemoglobin every kind of gases, but hemoglobin picks up only oxygen, which is a very important role of hemoglobin. That is why people go for testing of their hemoglobin level in the blood to doctor, and if it is satisfactory, it is all very good. So we should also be very careful about that our hemoglobin level should stay fine all the time in our blood, and we should always keep eating those kind of foods that support the increase of blood hemoglobin or overall blood efficiency, you can say. Okay, so we have discussed what is the role of respiratory system, that to breathe in the gases and ultimately to exhale out the gases. So, but there is another terminology which is called breathing. So some people, they get easily confused when they say respiratory system's job is to breathe or to support breathing basically. Yes, it is. But respiration is a complete phenomena. Respiration starts from breathing, it has a breathing part, and then it ends at respiration. Well, you must be confused that I am saying respiration is starting at breathing and ending at respiration. So respiration is basically linked to cells, while breathing is quite superficial, and breathing is linked with our lungs. So remember, when you take in the gases, your lungs, they filled up with gases, your hemoglobin picks up oxygen. So what is the role then? Where hemoglobin is taking that oxygen to? So oxygen is traveling in the blood with the help of hemoglobin, and oxygen is entering into every cell. If you recall from my previous lecture, I told you that oxygen enters into cells, oxygen then finally enters into mitochondria, and there in the mitochondria, oxygen is utilized in the burning reaction. So glucose or carbohydrates, they are burned inside mitochondria to produce ATP, and alongside that produces carbon dioxide and water. So this is the same, that carbon dioxide which is produced in the cells, that comes into blood, and from the blood it goes out of the body through lungs. So if you just think or talk about at the level of lungs, it is called breathing. That lungs are supporting to bring in the gases and take them out of the body, like carbon dioxide. So that phenomena of just taking in the gases and taking out the gases is called breathing. While when oxygen travels into blood and goes into cell, inside cells, it burns out the carbohydrate. So that reaction is called respiration. And of course, this is the purpose of breathing. This is the purpose of taking in oxygen. If oxygen would not be able to go into mitochondria or to produce ATP, then what is the benefit of breathing? So that is why breathing and respiration are two different phenomena, but they are linked with each other. So overall thing or overall system which is supporting breathing and respiration is called respiratory system. I can mention here, just for the sake of clarity, that if I say, let's say I write here breathing, and I write here respiration. So who is involved in breathing? Lungs. And who is involved in respiration? Cells. So inside cells, mitochondria. And which chemical reaction happens in the case of respiration? Oxygen plus glucose gives you ATP plus CO2 plus water. And this is that CO2 that goes through the lungs out of the body. And this is that oxygen that comes through the lungs ultimately into mitochondria. So this way, breathing and respiration, they both work together as well as technically differently. So this is the importance of breathing, that we want to take in the gases and take out the gases. So here they are putting this thing into consideration, that breathing is happening at the level of lungs only, while respiration is happening inside mitochondria. So overall system is called respiratory system, whose initial part is the breathing part and ending part is respiratory or respiration part. So the system is starting from nose. These are the organs which are involved. So you know about the role of nose, throat, then air passageway, and ultimately lungs. So these are the components, organs, which are ultimately directing your oxygen towards blood or hemoglobin. So this is how the system looks like. If you look at the system very closely, so you need to be clear about a few things. For example, we are very clear about nose, right? So we can take in the gases through the mouth as well and through the nose. And as I mentioned in the previous lecture, what is pharynx? Pharynx is the opening of throat. It is the opening of throat that leads to food pipe or windpipe. So this time we are interested in the windpipe. So pharynx is opening of the throat that leads to windpipe as well as food pipe. So this time we are talking about windpipe. So windpipe is called trachea, while the upper part of windpipe is called larynx. So larynx is the upper part of windpipe where vocal cords are present. So you know about vocal cords. Vocal cords, they are present just below your throat, or you can say just below the opening of the throat, where they vibrate and they create or produce different sound. So once again the definition is, pharynx is the opening of throat. It is the opening of basically wind as well as food, both pipes. So this time we are talking about the windpipe, and windpipe is trachea, this one, which is quite starting where throat is ending, while the upper part of trachea is called larynx, and larynx contains vocal cords which produce sound. And then if we look more closely, so trachea is split into two pipes, one going to the right and one going to the left. You can see that white splitting. So that white splitting is called bronchus. There are two bronchus, so overall they are called bronchi. So trachea is being split into two bronchi, and then bronchi is further divided. As you can see in the background inside lungs, it is further split into small tubings, and that tubing is called bronchioles. And bronchioles is leading finally into small sac-like things or bubble-like things which are called alveoli. I can draw this diagram for you once again on the whiteboard. Okay, so this is, I'm starting from trachea. This is trachea, and trachea is divided this way. So this is trachea, and this is bronchus. This is also bronchus. So bronchus is further divided into further tubings, exactly this way. It is also divided into further tubings. So these tubings are called bronchioles. In the same way, these tubings or pipings, basically, they are also called bronchioles. And these pipes, they finally end into a small balloon-like, very small balloon-like things, or small bubbles. So these bubbles, they are called alveoli. And around these bubbles there are blood capillaries. So they basically pick up the oxygen. So oxygen travels this way, or air travels this way and here, and ultimately into blood. And exactly this way, from here oxygen is traveling into the other lung and ultimately through these alveoli into blood. And blood contains hemoglobin, and hemoglobin only picks up oxygen, while the remaining gases, they go out exactly in the opposite direction through the same channel. So please do not get confused with these few components: pharynx, larynx, trachea, as well as bronchus, bronchioles, alveoli. Okay, here you are seeing diaphragm. Diaphragm is a muscular tissue which is present just underneath the lungs, quite close to abdomen. So diaphragm is a muscle. It's a very strong muscle. So because of this diaphragm, basically your lungs get the capability to allow the air to fill them. When we say we want to breathe strongly, we want to inhale more air, and we think as if we are pulling the air inside. We are not actually, these are not lungs actually who have the capability to pull the air inside. It is actually we are lowering the diaphragm. If we lower the diaphragm, our lungs, they get more space to be filled. And of course there is environmental air pressure, and automatically when we create space for the lungs to be filled, the air automatically comes inside our lungs, and lungs, they get filled. And when we push these lungs by squeezing the diaphragm, so when we touch the diaphragm with the lungs, so diaphragm pushes the lungs strongly and the air is thrown. And air is thrown out of the body. So it is starting from nose. Nose is the main passageway. Air also enters through mouth. Pharynx is the throat, opening of the esophagus or the windpipe both. Larynx is the upper part of trachea or of the windpipe, and larynx contains vocal cords. And trachea is called the windpipe. It connects larynx to the lungs. Ultimately, this is leading into lungs. And bronchus, as I told you before, is a splitting of trachea. And finally bronchus is splitted into further, which is called bronchioles, and bronchioles, they are ending up into small bubble-like things or bubble-like structures which are called alveoli. And alveoli, they are surrounded by blood capillaries. They pick up oxygen from there. So this is how the lungs, they look like, and this is how finally these alveoli, sac-like structures, they look like. So bronchioles, they finally end at these sac-like things, bubble-like things, and those bubbles basically, they are covered by blood capillaries. I've explained during breathing, oxygen is picked up or carbon dioxide is released out of the body, and where this carbon dioxide is produced inside the cells because of the reaction of respiration. So finally, the disorders. So one disease of the respiratory system is asthma. You must be well aware of asthma. During any of the disease of the respiratory system, the efficiency or to pick up oxygen is basically reduced, which is a bad thing. Of course, our body requires oxygen at good level because oxygen has to produce energy. If because of any reason oxygen supply is diminished, the body does not get enough oxygen and ultimately does not produce enough energy. So one of them is asthma, and during asthma, what is happening? Narrowing of the bronchioles happening. So you know about bronchioles now. So bronchioles come after bronchus. So bronchioles, they get narrowed. If they are narrowed, they cannot supply enough oxygen towards alveoli. So that means oxygen would not be supplied to blood in good amount, which is a bad thing. Second disorder is emphysema. Emphysema is a damage to alveoli. If alveoli, the final sacs, would be damaged, they would not be able to provide oxygen to blood or to hemoglobin. SARS or any other viral infection of the respiratory system, and SARS is a strong viral disease. Because of that, again, the lungs would not be able to supply oxygen or enough oxygen to blood. And these days especially, there is this disease outbreak in the world, which is COVID-19. May it finish out immediately, inshallah. So again, it is just like, or it is basically SARS. So consequences of any respiratory disorder is poor exchange of gases and less availability of oxygen for the body. So of course there are doctors available and who diagnose the patient, and they provide different medicines, and we are hoping that soon the medicine would be available at some point against COVID-19. So inshallah everything would be fine even before, inshallah. If you have any questions further, please do not hesitate to ask me. Thank you so much.